A major Supreme Court fight could decide whether your right to carry ends the second you step onto a store parking lot. And if you think this is just a Hawaii story, you need to hear the next few minutes very carefully. Quick question before we continue. Are you subscribed? Because this is the kind of update that can save you from making a serious mistake without even knowing it. If you care about gun rights, self-defense, and staying out of trouble, hit that subscribe button right now. Here's what just happened. The case is called Wolford versus Lopez. It is now sitting at the U.S. Supreme Court. And the justices heard arguments on January 20th, 2026. The fight is over a Hawaii law that says, even if you already have a concealed carry permit, you still cannot carry on to private property open to the public, unless the owner gives express permission. That means places like stores, restaurants, and other everyday businesses. So think about that for a second. You did the paperwork, you passed the checks, you got the permit. And the moment you walk toward a gas station or sandwich shop, the law treats you like you may be breaking the rules, unless the owner has clearly said yes. Now, this is where it gets interesting. A lot of people hear that and say, well, it's private property, so what's the big deal? The big deal is the default rule. In most of life, you can enter a business open to the public unless you're told no. Same thing with carrying in many states. If the owner does not want guns, the owner can post a sign or tell you to leave. But Hawaii flipped that around. Hawaii made the rule no unless the owner says yes. That sounds small, but it changes everything. Imagine you are driving home late at night. You stop for gas. You're licensed. You're carrying for self-defense. Under the rule being challenged, you may need clear permission before stepping onto that property with your firearm. That is why the challengers say this law turns normal life into a legal minefield. It is not about some rare place. It is about the places people go every single day. And here's the part nobody's talking about enough. This is not just some local lawsuit with a few angry plaintiffs. The U.S. Department of Justice filed a brief backing the challengers. Let that sink in. The DOJ told the court that Hawaii's rule is basically an end run around the right to public carry. On top of that, more than 24 states backed the challenge too. So when you see the title of this video and wonder, is this a big deal? Yes, it is a very big deal. But here's what most people get wrong. This case is not really about whether every carry permit in America vanishes tomorrow. That is not what the court agreed to decide here. The question is narrower, but still huge. The Supreme Court is looking at whether a state can make it a crime for a licensed carry holder to bring a handgun onto private property open to the public unless the owner gives express authorization. In plain English, can the state turn most of your normal stops into default no-carry zones? That is the real fight. Let me break this down for you with 3 simple points. First, the court has already said in Bruen that law-abiding people have a right to carry a handgun in public for self-defense. Second, Hawaii passed this law after Bruen. Third, the challengers say Hawaii tried to obey the court on paper while killing the right in real life. That is why some people call this kind of rule anti-carry red tape. It does not say you can never carry. It just makes carrying so hard and risky that many people will give up. And if you are wondering why that matters, outside Hawaii, here's your answer. Other states have used similar ideas. If Hawaii wins, lawmakers in other places may see a roadmap. They may think, fine, we can't ban carry outright, but we can make nearly every important place off limits. Unless a business owner goes out of the way to say yes. That is why this case matters to you, even if you live thousands of miles away. Now let's talk about why the DOJ backing this case is such a big shift. The federal government told the Supreme Court that Hawaii's rule has both the purpose and the effect of burdening the right to public carry. In simpler words, the DOJ is saying this is not some neutral property rule. It is a gun rule dressed up as a property rule. The government also argued that the law works like a near-total ban because most businesses are not going to post a special message. Most owners will stay silent. And under Hawaii's rule, silence means you lose. That matters because the state says, what's the problem? Just ask. But think about how real life works. Are you really supposed to stop at every store entrance and ask an employee for permission? What if the employee says, I don't know? What if a different employee says something else? What if you get no clear answer? What if you are in a hurry with kids in the car and just need to run in for 2 minutes? That is exactly why the challengers say this is not a real option. It is a trap. If you're finding this helpful, imagine what you'll learn in my next video about the simple words that can protect your rights during a police contact. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because these little details matter more than most people realize. Now let me explain the legal backbone here, without the law school nonsense. The Supreme Court said in Heller that the Second Amendment protects an individual right. Then in Bruen, the court said the right to carry outside the home also matters. And courts should look at the text of the Second Amendment and the nation's history of gun laws. That means states cannot just invent new rules because they sound nice or feel safer. They have to show a real historical tradition. So Hawaii tried to do that. The state argued that property owners have always had the power to keep guns off their land, and that the law just helps protect that choice. Fair point, right? Well, not so fast. The challengers answered, of course, private owners can say no to guns. That is not the problem. The problem is when the state presumes every owner says no, even when the owner says nothing. That is a totally different thing. This is the part that shocked me. During arguments, one big fight was over old historical laws Hawaii used to defend its rule. Some of those examples drew serious heat, including a law from the Black Codes era after the Civil War. Justice Gorsuch pushed hard on that. Justice Alito did too. Why? Because using ugly, discriminatory laws as proof of a good American tradition is a dangerous move. If the history you need comes from laws aimed at controlling disfavored people, that is a major problem. Chief Justice Roberts also seemed bothered by the idea that the Second Amendment gets treated like a weaker right. He raised comparisons to the First Amendment. In simple terms, the concern was this: if other rights do not have to jump through this kind of special permission hoop, why should this one? Justice Alito hit a similar point, warning against treating the Second Amendment like a second-class right. Justice Kavanaugh sounded skeptical too, basically asking why the case should be complicated if the history is not strong enough to support Hawaii's rule. Now, quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult an attorney for your specific situation. And that brings us to the next big point. Here's a hypothetical example to explain this. Let's say you live in a state with a carry permit. You leave home legally armed. You stop at a grocery store, then a pharmacy, then a gas station, under a rule like Hawaii's. Each of those stops can become a separate question mark unless the owner clearly gave consent. Not because you are dangerous, not because you are prohibited, not because you skipped the permit process, but because the state changed the default from allowed unless told otherwise to forbidden unless clearly invited. That is why this case has people paying such close attention. Hey, 73% of people watching videos like this usually are not subscribed. Don't be part of that group. Join the gun owners who want straight, simple legal updates without the fluff. Click subscribe and stay ahead of changes like this before they hit your state. Now, let's get to the part that matters most to you. What could happen next? There are really three possible outcomes. First, the court could strike down Hawaii's express permission rule. For places open to the public, that would be a big win for carry rights and a warning shot to other states, using similar tricks. Second, the court could uphold Hawaii's rule and give states more room to box carry holders out of normal public life. Third, and this is very possible, the court could draw a line. The justices might say private homes are one thing, but businesses open to the public are another. That third option is important. Even some justices who sounded skeptical of Hawaii's law also looked for limiting principles. In plain English, they wanted to know where the line should be. Could a state protect a homeowner's rights at the front door? Probably easier to defend. Could a state treat every open business the same way? That sounded much harder for Hawaii to justify. But wait, there's something even more important. A lot of bad reporting has made people think this case is about all sensitive places too. Not exactly. The Supreme Court limited review here. The main question is the private property rule. So if someone tells you, this case will automatically wipe out every gun-free zone in America, slow down. That is not what is on the table. Could the ruling have wider effects? Yes. Could lawyers use it in other cases later? Absolutely. But right now, the core issue is whether the state can make normal businesses default no carry spaces. And here is the practical warning for you. Until the Supreme Court rules, do not act like this case is already won. Do not assume a viral headline is a green light. Do not assume a YouTube thumbnail changes the law. Where you live, that is how good people get in trouble. If you travel, check the current rules in your state. And in any state you visit, if your state has posted sign rules, learn them. If your state has off-limits locations, know them cold. This is not fear talk. This is survival talk. When I found this out, I couldn't believe how easy it is for lawmakers to turn a right into paperwork. Silence, confusion, and risk. That is the real lesson here. Rights are not always attacked head-on. Sometimes they get buried under procedures, signs, forms, delays, and vague rules nobody can follow in the real world. That is why this case matters so much. It asks whether the government can choke a right without ever saying the word ban. And remember, the DOJ did not just sit on the sidelines. The federal government told the court that Hawaii's law lacks a strong historical match and works like a near-total ban on public carry. More than 24 states backed that view. That does not guarantee a win, but it tells you this case is not some fringe argument. It is a serious constitutional showdown. This information could change fast once the court rules, likely by summer 2026. Subscribe now, because the next update will explain exactly what the decision means for your daily carry, your travel plans, and the mistakes you need to avoid the moment that ruling drops. So here's the bottom line. Wolford v. Lopez is one of the most important carry cases in the country right now because it asks a simple but powerful question. Can the government turn ordinary businesses into default no-carry zones and call that freedom? If the court says no, a lot of anti-carry red tape could come crashing down. If the court says yes, states will have a new playbook for making carry harder without saying the word ban. If you want clear updates without the legal fog, subscribe right now and share this with one gun owner. Who needs to hear it? I spend the time digging through this stuff so you do not get blindsided by a rule change after the fact. And one last reminder, this video is for education only. It is not legal advice and laws can change fast, so always check your local rules and talk to a qualified attorney if you need advice about your specific situation.